Welcome to the RotoWire WNBA show, where we talk about fantasy basketball. I'm Jason Shebilske alongside Kirien Sprecher. Today, we'll discuss this week's action from around the league. We'll also talk about some of the top options to add on waivers, including a pair of Sky players following the team's two-win week. And finally, we'll preview the week ahead, including Tuesday's Commissioner's Cup Championship. Those looking to subscribe to RotoWire can use the promo code YouTube15 at checkout for 15% off any RotoWire subscription. RotoWire continues with plenty of fantasy WNBA in-season tools, articles, betting advice as the season rolls along. But I just did my third fantasy football draft of the season yesterday, so we're getting into that season as well. And RotoWire will have more tools this year than ever before, with a lot of exciting announcements to come. And be sure to use the code YouTube15 at checkout to get the best deal. During today's show, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments and we'll get them answered. If you ask live, we'll get them answered on the show, but we'll also be active in the comments afterward to provide any additional insight, as well as on social media. You can tweet at us, blue sky us. I'm at Jason Shebilske everywhere, and Kirien is at Kirien Sprecher RW, so be sure to reach out there. Just before we came on the air, we have a trade. The Wings have traded Aneesah Smith to Las Vegas in exchange for the Aces 2027 first-round pick. Kirien, what are your initial reactions to this trade?
Well, first of all, I have to do a quick shout out here. Sir B. Terrell, you're a fantastic WNBA reporter. We use your posts constantly. However, this was not quite the bombshell trade that you hinted at on Twitter. All right. Obviously, this is a big time trade, but this isn't quite the blockbuster we thought was going to happen when we saw that tweet. We were talking about maybe Jewel Lloyd being shipped out. But yeah, my first reactions to this is I think the Aces think that they're in trouble. We've talked all season long, like, just give it time. Lloyd is new to the team. It's just going to take some time to adjust. You lose Kelsey Plum, obviously, like a huge initiator of the offense. Like, it's going to take some time to adjust. They got enough players. I think this is a huge sign of, like, yellow flag, at least a yellow flag. Like, we needed to make a big move. We needed to change the trajectory of this season. Now, I'm not sure Aneesah Smith necessarily does that, but I do think she can provide things that the Aces need, mainly taking pressure off of A'ja Wilson on the boards, taking playmaking pressure off of the guards, just making things easier. I don't think Aneesah Smith necessarily saves the season for the Aces here, but obviously this is like a big time addition, and I think she's going to be playing heavy minutes. I'm not doing the projections as to who she was going to replace in the rotation. I think Kia Stokes obviously takes a little bit of a hit, but Stokes isn't like a great fantasy contributor anyways. And then Aaliyah Nee, I feel like, would probably be the next player up that loses 5 to 8 minutes a night here. But yeah, so big trade for the Aces, and this definitely signals that they're they're worrying a little bit, but we'll see where they go after this.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see whether Kia Stokes takes that starting spot. I mean, whether Aneesah Smith takes that starting spot from Kia Stokes. We've talked a little bit in past weeks about how Kia Stokes is one of those players. She's consistently had a starting role for the Aces, but like you said, she hasn't been very fantasy relevant. And so I think that if Aneesah Smith can come in and press the coaching staff over there, I think that it's possible that I think Kia Stokes will always sort of have a role, maybe like a 15 to 20 minute per night player at least. But I think that Aneesah Smith could enter the discussion for a starting role. She's had mixed results in the past. She had 2 really strong seasons in Indiana, and then she fell off a little bit when the Fever prioritized Temi Fagbenle last year. But I think that it's possible that she helps provide at least a little boost for the Aces, who, like you said, they're in unfamiliar territory, at least as the last few years go, with them being out of the playoff picture at this point. So I think that this might provide a boost. Many other reporters have noted that a lot of players in the WNBA are unsigned heading into 2026. So we don't really know how the layout will shake out and how this Aces pick will fall. So this could be tremendous value for the Wings. And I think that at the very least, I think that this could help to revitalize Dallas in the coming years.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a no-brainer move for Dallas. Obviously, NaLyssa Smith just gets there and maybe building something, but yeah, this I don't think NaLyssa Smith is going to be on the future playoff contending Paige Beckers led Dallas Wings team, and maybe that first round pick next year, or was it 2027 pick? No,
27.
Yeah, 27 pick. So and maybe that pick is something, and obviously, like a team like the Aces trades, and everybody's first reaction is, well, that's going to be a bottom of the first round draft pick. Well, in 2 years from now, things can change, and if the Aces struggle to make the playoffs or have an early first round exit, things could change very, very fast, and all of a sudden that pick could be top 5, top 10. But that's maybe we're writing the Aces off a little bit too early here. I still think they're going to have a turnaround and they're going to make a run here. But just how high their ceiling can go. Like, obviously they're struggling. I think they can get back to playing good ball, but right now the Lynx are very, very good, and I don't know if the Aces are going to be able to get to that level.
I agree. And sometimes it feels as though our weekly recap is just talking about how impressive the Valkyries are, but they especially deserve recognition this week as they won 2 of 3 games, most recently beating the Storm by 27 points, and Seattle is no pushover by any means. Not only have the Valkyries outperformed preseason expectations by a significant margin, but they continue to rack up wins in June when some of their regulars were overseas playing in Eurobasket. They certainly look like a playoff team, and they've consistently been competitive against some of the top teams in the WNBA. So I'm really excited to see how the Valkyries look once they get some of their core back and once they're at full strength. I think that this is a team that could certainly make the playoffs and could maybe even be competitive in the playoffs to potentially push past the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. Valhalla is real. This team is real. I think Golden State's success is more real than the Aces' lack of success. I'll just leave it there. And then going back to like the weekly preview, I think I talked enough about the Aces and Golden State. We talk about them all the time, but last Monday I highlighted the Mercury as a team to watch. As they finally got healthy and see where they go. Copper and Thomas hadn't been, and Sabali hadn't really been playing 30 plus minutes yet, but they were back, and we'll see where they go. Well, they started off last week really hot. They had a huge win over the Liberty, scored 106 points. Sabali had 25. Alyssa Thomas nearly had a triple double with 15 assists. But then they fell short against the Aces, right? So this is another. This has been happening with the Phoenix, and I'll throw Seattle in that group too, because I've been lumping them together too. These teams have proven that I was wrong. They deserve to be in that tier 2, maybe even pushing into that tier 1 category, but they aren't going to solidify themselves in that tier 1 category until they can have consistent performances. Right now, it's just like big win, big letdown, big win, big letdown. And maybe not a big letdown. Maybe that's stretching it. These two teams are playing well, but there are letdowns mixed in there. And if you're going to be in that tier 1 category, you can't have those letdowns. So I think the Mercury are right on the cusp of jumping into that tier 1 category for me. Just got to finish that consistency. And when you're talking about matching up against a playoff team, if this Phoenix team is healthy in the playoffs, like guarding Sabali, guarding Alyssa Thomas, guarding Kalea, your third best defender is going to be guarding Copper on a regular basis. I'm pretty sure the last time that happened, Kalea Copper was finals MVP for the Chicago Sky. So
yeah, and the way that the Mercury have gelled over the first half of the season has been really impressive, because sometimes we will see, not only just in the WNBA but around sports, a team will acquire a lot of talent during the offseason, similar to what the Mercury did with Satu Sabali and Alyssa Thomas. And it'll take a while for the team to really mesh and gel together. But Phoenix has done it a lot so far. And if they can continue to build on that chemistry and make a playoff run, I think that they're a dangerous team they're a dangerous team to watch come September and potentially October as well. And on the flip side of things, the Sparks have really struggled recently, including 2 losses to the Sky this week. They'll presumably get Cameron Brink back soon. Holly Rowe reported during the draft that that Cameron Brink would return sometime in June. We're now at the end of June, still no Cameron Brink, still like still not major updates on when she'll be able to return. And once she is back on the court, she'll likely need time to regain her conditioning. And even when she's fully healthy, I don't think that she'll even be enough to really help put the team back into contention in 2025. This feels like a lost season with just kind of some building blocks. Like Kelsey Plum has been strong, Dearica Hamby has remained strong. And I think that it's a team that come 2026 and beyond is an intriguing team. But for 2025, it seems as though the ship has sailed a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to have to rush Brink back. But I do think and even when she does come back, they're probably going to ease her along. Like you said, this season's probably lost anyways. But I do think this second half is super important for her and Rickea Jackson and Kelsey Plum to like develop a little bit of chemistry together. Obviously, the Jackson Brink combo as rookies, like that's the future of the Sparks. They're bought into that for at least the next couple of years. So yeah, I don't think Brink coming back is going to change the outlook of the 2025 Sparks, but it could be a fun team to watch if she comes back and she's playing defense at the level she was early in her rookie season.
Absolutely.
And then, and speaking of struggles, we'll just finish off the weekly preview with the Sun. They're in rough shape. 9 straight losses. Haven't won since June 6th. Marina Mabry's going to be out for a couple more weeks. There's no end in sight for Connecticut. We always say there's no easy games in the WNBA. That Connecticut on your schedule is looking like one of those few where you can probably chalk that one up to a W.
Absolutely. And Jeff Whiteley has a question asking about the best schedule as far as teams go for the fantasy playoffs. So we admittedly didn't really prepare this for this week, and we'll have a better answer come next week. But one team, as I was just looking through schedules over the past few minutes, one team that really stands out to me is Atlanta. Their last 6 games of the season, they have a game against Dallas, game against Connecticut, 2 games against the Sparks, and then 2 more games against the Sun. So those are teams that are all around the bottom of the league. The Dream are probably going to hover around like that 4-5 seed. So I think that they will still really have something to play for down the stretch because home court advantage is so important come the playoffs. And so I think that you run the risk with those Dream matchups that they'll get a little bit out of hand and just on the scoreboard, and they might rest some of their starters. But if you're looking for an easy schedule down the stretch, Atlanta, I think, really has the chance to run the table over those last 6 games and to have their players really stand out.
Yeah, that's absolutely a good call. And then like if you're talking about potential blowouts in those games, if you're streaming those types of players, and maybe Jeff, you're asking this early so you can go out and you can target Brain Howard in a trade or target Alicia Gray in a trade or something. But if you're going to look to stream players like that, Naz Hillman, Tina Pau, like there's a lot of good players on this Atlanta squad that are 6th, 7th rotation type players that could be, scoring 25 plus points in each one of those games against, the Sun and the Sparks that me and Jason both just said are struggling mightily right now.
Absolutely. And we'll continue to have more insight on that and other playoff trends. But thank you for that question. And for now, target Atlanta early and often. Moving on to waiver pickups for this week, Rachel Banham and Kia Nurse from the Sky have been really strong in recent games. Chicago's backcourt has been pretty unpredictable since Courtney Vandersloot went down. Banham has taken on a starting role over the last 4 games and has recorded at least 13 ESPN fantasy points in each of those appearances, while Nurse was pushed out of the starting lineup by Banham, but has still been productive over her last 3 outings, averaging 20 fantasy points per game during that time. Because of the unpredictability in Chicago, I don't think that I view either player as a long-term pickup at this point, but both have had hot hands recently, which has come at the expense of Haley Van Lith. So if we're talking risers and fallers, I would definitely say that Banham and Nurse are on the rise, but it's maybe more of a gradual slope, and Van Lith is on the falling side of things. I think that she could pick things back up at some point, but she just really doesn't have much fantasy value at this point.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be the same trend that with Venlith that's happened from the beginning of the season, where she, struggles to make an impact. She has one good game. She gets to see some more consistent minutes, but then the production drops off. That's pretty classic with rookies. And obviously we've been kind of spoiled the last couple of years. The rookies in Washington are Sonia Citrone and Kiki Irfin are popping off too. So this Hailey Venlith rookie experience is more normal compared to the rest of the rookies we've been seeing. And yeah, I like Rachel Banham. I like Kia Nurse. As a fan of the Chicago Sky, I'm just going to hesitate to say, like, yes, go add them, because we're finally winning games for once, and I don't want to jinx anything. So last week I did a lot of really, like, lowly rostered players and long shots, and maybe you can strike gold. Maybe that worked out for you, maybe it didn't. This week it's going to be really hard to stream players. We'll talk about the weekly preview at the end of the show like we normally do, but the Commissioner's Cup championship game doesn't count towards fantasy, I believe. I don't think it did last year. It's not showing up on the ESPN app right currently. So without that game, then there's one busy slate on Thursday, and other than that, it's a pretty quiet week. So it's going to be really hard to stream players. So this week, I'm just going to give you some, maybe they're already rostered in your league, but these are players that should be rostered and could be like long-term adds and long-term contributors for your fantasy team. So I'm just going to start off with Tiffany Hayes. She's rostered in just over 50% of leagues. So this is kind of cheating a little bit. We normally set the cutoff at 50, but this is just like one of those things where last call to go out and get Tiffany Hayes. She was hurt, and then she moved out of the starting lineup, so I get why she was dropped in so many leagues, but she's back in a starting role. She scored in double figures in 6 straight. She missed 7 of 8 games, and now she scored in double figures in 6 straight. She just coming off a season high 21 points. Yes, Golden State is getting reinforcements soon. Janelle Salon, Julie Van Loo, Xanda Lassini, like some of these players are going to come back, but when all these players were available, Tiffany Hayes was in the starting lineup and she was playing 30 minutes per game. I don't expect that to change. I think Hayes is a starter on this team when they're fully healthy, and I expect her to be a must roster player for the rest of the season. So if she's not rostered in your league, go out and get her now.
I agree. And one of the biggest knocks against Tiffany Hayes in terms of her fantasy appeal early in the season has been that she's already missed 7 games. So it's a little bit hard to tell how the core will mesh together once she's fully healthy and once they're all available and back from a Eurobasket. But I think that Tiffany Hayes is one of the more talented players on the roster. She's certainly a veteran presence on a team that doesn't have a lot of WNBA experience in some areas. But they're certainly making things work. And I think that if they're to continue their success, I think Tiffany Hayes is someone who will probably stay in the lineup. Whereas even someone like Kate Martin, who has also been really strong lately, I think that she has slightly more like long-term risk, just because Martin was inconsistent earlier in the season when the Valkyries were at full strength, whereas Tiffany Hayes has been pretty strong throughout the season whenever she's been healthy. So I really love that call, and I think that Tiffany Hayes is certainly someone to add long term. One player who was inconsistent earlier this season but has found her footing over the last week is Sug Sutton of the Mystics. She's racked up at least 20 ESPN fantasy points in each of her last 4 outings, and she's recorded at least 16 fantasy points in 6 consecutive appearances. She did suffer a lower body injury against the Wings on Saturday, and the severity isn't yet known. I'm still probably adding her this week if I need a streamer, but the injury just puts a slight asterisk on her appeal for this week.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. The injury is the only reason why I wouldn't want to add her, and probably the only reason why she's being dropped. But this is a weird week, right? There's not very much, like, there's a long break until there's games again. So I'm assuming she'll be fine. She's got a couple of days off. Even if she's not fine, you have her for the weeks to come, right? And I think I would classify her as a close to must roster player at this point. So if she's healthy, she should be in your lineup when available. And, right now she's available in a lot of leagues. So go out and grab her. I'm sticking with Golden State. Temi Fagbenle, rostered in below 50% of leagues. She was missing time due to Eurobasket. She returned to action Sunday. She finished with only 4 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 20 minutes off the bench. So I can see why fantasy managers are like, she missed time. I dropped her. Now she's not performing well. The production's going to come. All right. This year, everybody's like, oh, like she was playing basketball in Eurobasket. Like they don't need to like recondition or anything. It's a different team. It's a different league. She just traveled across the world, right? Like, come on, guys. Like, anytime you have, coming from a player coming from overseas obligations, it's going to take them a little time before they're ready to play 35 plus minutes in a professional game. They got to get back to their families. They got to get back in their routine. They got to get back in their workouts. So I think Fagbenle is going to be just fine. Her first 10 appearances, she started all of them. She averaged 10.6 boards and assists, a steal and a half, and nearly a block per game. So I expect that production to be more regular than the 20 minutes off the bench.
I agree. Like Tiffany Hayes has been productive for years and years in the WNBA, whereas Fagbenle is a little bit newer. But Fagbenle really showed out well in Indiana last year, and she's already been showing out this season. So despite her lackluster performance and her return to action, like you said, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances on her part. So just give her a little bit of time, and she should be back to a solid role really soon. Aneesah Morrow also appears to be fully healthy and adjusting to the WNBA level, and she's coming off back-to-back double-doubles despite coming off the bench in each of those appearances. She was dominant in college, and she's finally becoming more involved for the struggling Sun. It wouldn't be surprising to see her start before too long, and she's certainly worth picking up in most fantasy leagues, as she has some long-term upside if she can maintain a role. I think that it's possible that because this is such a lost season for the Sun, that they try and move some of their top players as the season progresses just to get some draft pick compensation or maybe some younger players in return. But Aneesah Morrow, I think, is someone who should really have a chance to grow on this team. And if the Sun are going to be successful in the next few years, I think Aneesah Morrow is a player who will really need to put the team on her back and show out. And she's done so in the last few games. And I'm intrigued to see whether she can carry that momentum going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel bad that we didn't include her last week. You were kind of the safer option. I was kind of the long shot, and she was kind of just like right in that middle ground. We had a comment on last week's show about it, and I was like, yes, definitely go out and add her. Look at before last week. Obviously, last week was the 23rd. So before last week's show, this was her 3 games: 16-9 with 3 steals, 10-7, 14-4. And so it's like, yes, that's a great trend. So then we get that comment. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. She should be rostered. Like, go out and add her. Very next game, goes back to the bench, 12 minutes, 0 points off the bench. So, and then, obviously, as we should have expected, then her next 2 games are both double doubles, and one of them scores 20 points in one of them, 7 total steals. Morrow is a fantastic option. Like you said, the Sun are trending down. She's going to get developmental minutes. She's going to play heavy minutes. I think this is probably the last time we talk about her where she's rostered below 50% of leagues. And then sticking with the players that are going to probably help you long term, Odyssey Sims. We talked about her a couple times on the show. She's rostered in only 20% of leagues right now, and I get it. Since June 10th, she's totaled 2 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. It's not just like she's averaging those. This has been a long stretch where she's not productive enough. She's been in and out of the lineup. But I think that injury was played a large part of that. With the wonky week, I feel like you can stash her now and hope she gets back to her early season ways soon. Before that injury, she was averaging 12 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, and a steal in 32 minutes per game. I expect that production to be her production to be closer to that than it has been to what it's been the last month.
Yeah, and because this is such a weird week, a lot of teams have just one game, and some fantasy weeks will wind up stretching 2 weeks. From what I've seen, this week still ends this upcoming Sunday, so it's just a 1 week fantasy week. And the Sparks are one of the few teams with 2 games. I'm intrigued to see whether Odyssey Sims regains her conditioning by the time the week is over. She's rostered in just around 20% of leagues, so she's still available in plenty. But if you're looking for just a short-term boost for this week, just to add, especially for Saturday when there are only two WNBA games going on. Shea Petty has taken on a starting role in Odyssey Sims' absence. And if Petty can stay in the starting lineup, I think that she's someone who she's available almost everywhere. She's rostered in just 0.6% of leagues. She's a long shot who hasn't displayed much upside, but she's had double-digit fantasy points in like each of the last 4 games. So she could make the difference in a week that will have a lot fewer players playing than usual.
That's a good call.
And one team, just going off script a little bit, this isn't even in our game notes. One bonus player to add. I was looking at the schedule for this week. The Lynx have 3 games, not including the Commissioner's Cup Championship. And Jessica Shepard is a player who has been at least more productive recently than she had been. She missed some time due to, I think, an injury, but she posted 37 points during her return to action as a starter on June 24th. She's come off the bench in each of her last 2 outings, but still posted double-digit ESPN fantasy points in each of those games. So I think that she's someone who, if you're looking for just a boost for this week, Jessica Shepard could be a player who you could just plug into your lineup for this week.
For 2 notes there, she was a Eurobasket for the Slovenian team, so they just lost early, so she came back. And the one start that she made since returning was Collier was out. So but other than that, like, yes, she's productive. I think she's going to be playing 20 minutes per game. And this Minnesota team is definitely capable of blowing teams out. So I don't mind that advice at all.
Yeah, and especially this week, because even though for fantasy purposes the Lynx only have 3 games, they have 4 games this week as a team. So it's possible that after the Commissioner's Cup Championship, maybe they rest Collier, maybe they rest another one of those players. So Shepard, I would say, has more upside than Shea Petty does, but maybe don't bank on it for every game at least. Just kind of a solid floor and help you get through this weird week for sure.
I like it.
And moving on to our weekly preview, as we've alluded to, the WNBA schedule is a bit lighter than usual due to the Commissioner's Cup Championship on Tuesday between the Fever and Lynx. Certainly the biggest question mark heading into this matchup has to be Caitlin Clark, as she's missed the last 2 games. Head coach Stephanie White seemed to allude to Clark being available the other day in the locker room, but nothing is official yet. Kirien, if Clark is available for this matchup, how do you see it unfolding?
While we've been recording, since we hit record, there was a report that Caitlin Clark partially practiced today. So I feel like she's probably trending in the right direction to play tomorrow. If she's available, though, I'm still going with the Lynx. Clark needs to be available, 1, and then 2, she needs to be, at full strength. She needs to be at the height of her powers to defeat this Lynx team, and she just hasn't really been there this season. Obviously, the last time she came back from an injury absence, she was there, so maybe she is. But I think the margin of error is so much larger for the Lynx than it is for the Fever in this one. So I think it's an easy pick for me. I do think eventually the Fever are going to get on the Lynx's level. It's just going to take some chemistry time. It's really hard, to develop chemistry when you're not playing with your best player, right? When Clark, obviously these other players are playing together, they're developing chemistry together, but when Clark gets thrown in the mix, everything changes, right? Like, it's not like she makes everything easier for everybody, sure, but the whole dynamic of the offense of the team changes when Clark comes back. So they're going to need an extended stretch with Clark available before I'm picking them to knock off the Lynx.
Yeah, and whenever Caitlin Clark is out and we're looking for some Fever to take her place, it's always interesting to look at Aaliyah Boston and Natasha Howard and Kelsey Mitchell and players like that, because Caitlin Clark is certainly known for her three-point abilities, for her scoring abilities, but her passing abilities are what make the team around her just that much better. And so I think that, like, if she's available for the Commissioner's Cup Championship, it certainly gives them a leg up. But like you said, the Lynx are a well-oiled machine. They came within overtime of winning another title last year. And so I think that Minnesota, even though they've had some bumps in the road in June, I think that they'll probably come out of the gates in this game looking good. If Caitlin Clark doesn't play either Tuesday or later this week, I think that Ari McDonald could really step up. She might have some more staying power on this roster now that DeWanna Bonner has been let go by the team. But I think that Caitlin Clark will certainly be the X factor. That if Clark is available, the Fever maybe have a fighting chance, but I still think that the Lynx take it regardless.
Yeah, I think that's great analysis there. I just the Caitlin Clark thing with me is like it all plays in together, right? Like, yes, she's a great passer, but she's a great passer because there's so much spacing on the floor, because she shoots from so far out. So when you're shooting from half court, you got to guard her from half court. And when you got to guard a player at half court and you got to guard Aaliyah Boston under the basket, now you have the whole half court to play with. So she just makes everything easier, and it's such a fun player to watch. And maybe just going back to that MVP conversation we had, maybe was it last week or 2 weeks ago, the Lynx did lose to the Mystics without Collier, so that is like a feather in Collier's MVP campaign. Where, like, I know we were talking about the Fever not playing that well without Clark, and then if Clark comes back and they go on a run, that might be able to put Clark ahead of Collier, but. That loss to the Mystics, I feel like as reporters, as journalists, we can go back and be like, this team is not the same with Collier. Even though maybe they can win some games, maybe they're a better team than the Fever are without Clark. Collier is deserving of MVP this year for sure.
And then the Seattle-Atlanta matchup this week, both of them, as you've kind of alluded to, are like basically tier 2 teams, and tier 2 in the WNBA is pretty small. You wrote that Atlanta won 94-87 on May 30th, and I think that the Storm, coming off of that 27-point loss to the Valkyries, will certainly be looking to rebound, but I think that this will be a really entertaining matchup.
Yeah, like I said, these teams have proved me wrong, but they still have a long way to go to like prove that they're in contention for a championship this season. And really, it just is consistency. I think they have the star power and the staying power, just doing that on a nightly basis.
Absolutely. And then just one more, the Aces and the Fever also on that Thursday, which is when the Seattle and Atlanta matchup is going on. Both teams are hovering around 500, especially if Caitlin Clark is back. I think that this will be a really intriguing way to just see, like, okay, are the Fever really in that tier above the Aces like we expect them to be? Or are the Aces maybe more competitive than we expect them to be? And I think that that's really something that we can only find out by watching this matchup. Both teams have experienced coaching staffs that I think that they'll be fine in the long run, but I think that this will really help to see how they match up against each other. And that does it for this week's show. We'll be back next Monday at 1 p.m. Central. Be sure to join us then. Thanks for watching.